I really,
Everybody seems to remember her saying, "I will place your hands."
yes, yes. And I do the same. And I warn them now, I'm not going to touch a
Mhm.
student in this day and age without
Yeah,
warning. But that was very helpful for me.
yeah, yeah. So, I would always go back to, I remember her saying, singing was simple. It's, low support, open throat, and high placement. So, how did she explain the idea of open throat?
I remember hearing the words cusp of a yawn.
Uh huh.
And I don't know if that was something she used with other people, but that's the only thing I can remember. I I do remember a lot about relaxing the larynx and
I think that is one and the same. Relaxing
right,
larynx and
right,
open throat.
right. I remember that more than open the throat. It was more about relax the
Mhm.
larynx.
The body's natural reaction to pain or stress is to tense up. You hit your thumb with the hammer. The first thing you do is you like that, or you burn your finger. You go, you tense up, and that's your brain telling your body, turn up the volume. You've got pain going on here. Well, you've come home some afternoon after a hard day, and your neck is just as tight and tense, and you've got that tension headache. That's your body saying you should not be doing what you've just been doing. It's turning up the volume on pain and so forth, or that tension. She said singing is a stressful and very athletic endeavor, and you have to train your body physically and mentally to react in the opposite direction that it's naturally going to react to. So a lot of that, I told you for many lessons, it was just doing the scales and making sure that things were even. But a lot of that was just simply making sure that I was training my body to mentally and physically relax. Not relax in the sense that people think of relaxing, which is the body kind of collapsing on itself, but relaxing and stretching out in the way that, say, a ballet dancer has to elongate their muscles. The other thing about yawning is when you yawn, the soft palate goes up. If the soft palate is not up and closing off those nasal passages, then it's going to have a nasal sound if you're projecting it forward. But if you've got that full open-throated feel and placement, then you can place it as high as you want in the mask, and it's not going to have a nasal sound. Yeah. And very often she would have me do a scale and, do the pinch your nose to make sure that it wasn't being nasal.
Yeah.
Lift your palate. Allow the jaw to release. Allow to have a sense of surprise in the back of your throat. And fortunately, I have the physiology in my throat that allowed me to do that. To find that she would talk about lift, up and over and forward, lift and up and over and forward, so that there's. And I know that, like Nikolai Genda, when he teaches, he talks about you pull back to find forward. And I know that's what she talked about. She even talked about a slingshot, that sense of this, that sense of stretch. She used to wear a bun, of course, and she would sit in the audience and I know from my friend Kevin Langan, she was doing this a lot, and he was like, she said, I had an itch. I love Lamperti's. You're probably going to ask me about this. Lamperti's says, vocal placement is an anomaly. That if the throat is made free and the pressure stays below it, the voice will place itself. And I seem to recall something like that from her, that feeling of that the throat, the larynx needs to float and the throat needs to be free and open so that the voice can go up and over and out.
Well, the interesting thing about what you said about the rectangle is I remember her talking to me about, especially as you go higher, to pull this direction.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Which is
And I talk about vocal flare,
yeah.
that there's a sense of,
Yeah.
I mean, she even drew a triangle, that as you're going up, there's a sense of, she said your back molars should feel like they're moving.
Exactly.
She talked about this spot here, the clavicle, right? These two bones here, and she talked about this, and I should know the name of it, but she called it the little dippity doo. I remember that, and she said when you take your breath, it should separate and go low, and she said there's your open throat, and she said, and then the larynx will just relax into that. And she was very specific about that spot, that niche there, and the larynx dropping down. And that was, she talked a lot about, that term open throat. She didn't use those two words with me often at all, but she talked about the term space back there. She used the term space probably 9 times out of 10 being open throat. Oh, along with that, certainly, head position was another thing that, I was like a downhill skier, right? I had my chin and my head over my toes, and that was a real challenge for me to get my head over my torso so that I had and there's the gesture, the famous Harshaw gesture, the up and over and there. And so that, of course, I believe to be part and parcel of open throat as well.
So, what about the open throat? Was that something she addressed with you, and how?
You know, I don't remember her saying that open throat, but she used to. What she communicated, maybe she did, and I just don't remember. But she used to talk constantly about having everything, free of tension and released, and then she would talk to me about stabilizing my larynx, which sort of confused me for a while, because when I think of stabilizing something, I think of it not being relaxed, and so that's something that I don't say I struggled with. I understood the release, the openness of it, and she may have used that open throat. That communicated to me completely. But I think one of the issues I had when I went there too was jacking my larynx up when I sang, and so I would, that tension so the stabilizing, and it took a long time to totally let go of that. I think where I felt that openness was really there, and I was not any longer putting tension in my larynx, that was after I left, Miss Harshaw. I was on the journey of doing it, but I know what that feels like now, and have for a long time, but I don't know that I understood stabilizing my larynx before that.
So would you say when she was talking about stabilizing, was she talking about lowering it into a relaxed position?
Yeah, that's what I feel. Not in a way that you push it down, though, no. But about releasing it and then not letting it jack up anymore. And I'm pretty sure that's what she was talking about but in the beginning when she told me stabilizing my larynx, I thought of holding my larynx. And
I could see that.
yeah, and that confused me a little bit. But see, I was so engaged with my larynx anyway. I hadn't quite discovered what letting it go really was like.
Well, you did eventually.
Yeah, I did eventually.
No, Now, I remember being about 35, and one day I was singing, and I thought, she always talked about this button-down thing, and I never understood that.
Yeah, I sort of remember that.
Yeah.
Was that sensational phonation between Tilly and me?
Well, no, it was actually a sense of keeping this down, because I sang very much with my chest a lot when I arrived, and she was always talking about this, And I finally realized when I was about 35, I had one of those, oh, that's what she meant.
Yeah.
Moments, where I thought, okay, this needs to be down and wide, not pumped up. So, yeah.
It was basically just about the larynx and trying to keep the throat sort of, this way, and how you did that by taking the jaw, having the jaw go down and back, and feeling the space up here in front of the ears, so that then when the jaw was going back, the larynx is going to go down. It has to. And so trying to stay with that position of the jaw, and of course then the tongue would be involved, all the other stuff. But that was sort of I think initially, again, when I first started the first lessons, when my throat opened up, then the sound had a little bit more substance to it. And I saw immediately, I think later on I maybe got into some problems with trying that I was over supporting. That's what I said in retrospect when I left her studio, that why I was having problems. And for me, I was over supporting. I was trying to have a voice like yours. I wanted this, I wanted I think I wanted a bigger sound, or I don't know. And my throat just wouldn't do it. Yeah. And so then I got back to getting my voice kind of slimmed down a little bit, back to what it was, but always with the idea of keeping that space there, of how important that is. Something I would try to pass on to my students, and because they were always amazed. I'd say, you space here, and you do that, and then feel what your larynx does, and because Harshaw did that from the get go. I mean, I remember.
Having to do with the tongue, having to do with the arches. The sort of the three things that I recall from her that are so essential: the lift of the soft palate, the engaging wide and up of the arches, the falsetto arches, and expanding the space behind the arches. And so those, I sort of call them 3 easy steps to an open throat. I think that was my little clever thing. But that all really is engaging. It's beginning to engage during the breath. And so I think the processes are complementary and largely simultaneous.
Yeah, I would totally say that's true.
Yeah.
I remember the one thing she told me was, she said, you have these bones here.
Yeah.
They don't move. Imagine you expand them.
Yes.
And
yes.
that was the thing that helped me feel that.
Yes. That is something that along those lines that I've had to sort of deal with, because as I even reread in my my green notebook over there, notes that I kept in all those lessons, because I didn't record. I would write down notes. I would then afterwards go to the student lounge, get a cup of coffee out of the machine, say hello to Joseph Gingold as he walked by, and try to decipher what I had jotted down and organize my notes. But the tendons, as I think she used that word with me, alongside the larynx, and then in the back as well. Yeah. She said things like, hold them open, make them stay open, which to me, in trying not to be static in a negative sense, just think of that as the direction to go. And so not so much, for me, I think there was a period of time, and I hear this in a lot of lower voices, they will do that in a way that depresses the larynx and stiffens up the tongue, and then the whole sound is sort of manufactured, as I would say. Yeah. So I think it's important to have these words and concepts in the context fluidity and choice, bringing about things rather than nailing it in and not letting it move.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously that's...
Yeah. And I think a lot of people may misunderstand that over time.
I remember her at one point in time, making sure that you don't stick your neck out in a certain way, correcting that with me. I remember at one time, thinking she wanted this, especially where the neck went into the body, to think really wide through here. I think any of the space that she worked on was the idea of opening up the throat. The tongue position really helped get the throat open. I thought it's because she wanted the tongue along the anterior wall of the throat. And that helped open it up this way, not just this way. I do remember, which will segue into placement, that she said if your breast support is good and your throat is open, the tone almost goes to where it's supposed to on its own. And that was really hard for me personally, because I, in my undergrad, had been a little bit left to my own devices technically, and I didn't know how else to do anything, so I just kind of controlled it, and I grabbed it and I just shoved it somewhere. And so the idea of not driving my sound, which is placement, I had a really hard time stepping back from that. And so I think that she talked to me a lot about the open throat in hopes that I would give up the idea of driving. I unfortunately did not fully understand that concept until after she died.
Which one?
The not driving the voice. Yeah, I did not fully, and so I don't know if that means my throat wasn't open that whole time, or I just finally gave up control. I'm at the risk of sounding like a crazy person. You may want to edit this one if it sounds way too crazy. But we got my last lessons were August before she died in November. And I was supposed to be there that week in November when she died. And we had really great series of lessons because I'd spend a handful of days with her. And we had really great lessons, and I was getting really close to finally giving up some things that I had been holding on to. And meanwhile, every time she tells me that, Jane, you're driving your voice, I don't think I am. I mean, I really, honest to God, do not think I'm driving my voice. And so we're getting, it's like, circling the drain. I'm getting really, really close in August. And so I was supposed to be in Chicago for lessons when she died, so I was able to go to her funeral. And then when I flew back to New York, I had work coming up, so I had to start singing again. And that was, I know for many of us, the last thing we wanted to do was open our mouths and sing. And so I walked to the piano, and I hit an F, the higher F, and I just sang, ah. And I'm like, wait. And I hit it again, and I sang it again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was driving my voice. So there's a part of me that thinks that was a gift from beyond, because she's never going to get it. So I'm just going to have to give it to her. Somebody's going to have to, higher power must intervene at this moment, or else it's never going to happen. And it was not until the week after she died that I actually understood what not driving your voice. I mean, she would tell me, it's like marking. I just remember she never gave up. I will tell you that. She never gave up on me. But now I realize I must have driven her crazy, because sometimes my own students drive me crazy when they do exactly what I couldn't get out of for quite a few years. And it was sort of the last little thing that I needed to learn. And so, yes, I remember the open throat, but it was so much about the open throat in an effort not to grab and shove, I think. It was, I think I was a unique, well, I know this for a fact. She did tell me that that I was one of the most stubborn singers she has ever worked with, and that it took her 2 years to undo all the bad things that I came in doing. I mean, I had every bad habit that there was because I was allowed to sing opera on the Max stage with zero technique. I just made sound, and somehow that was able to happen. I think she never would have let that happen. She would have not let me on that stage doing some of the things that I did. But I think it took her so long to get me to undo the jaw, undo the everything. But then it took her a while to get me to then do new things on top of correcting all the really bad habits. So I think she just had so much technical work to do that the concept of open throat came in relationship to all the other things I had to correct. Like jaw had, my jaw was as far forward as I think as it possibly could be because I didn't know how to breathe. And I just think that the specific part about open throat was more about correcting all the other things and not getting me to squeeze through there. I know she wanted a really low laryngeal position, and I think that in those days she could let all of us sing with a really nice, almost verging on depressed larynx to get us to understand what that was. And that was a different time. None of us were on YouTube or streamed or anything. And I kind of miss those days because she was allowed to kind of put us in a half-done state for a good long period of time so we could actually learn how to do this the right way.
When I first started with her and she was discussing the idea of low larynx, which no one had ever mentioned to me, and nobody had explained just how high a high pharynx can be. I had thought, well, it's like a yawn sigh, and I mentioned that to her. She said, no, it isn't. She said, it's like the biggest part of the yawn in the middle where the cat goes creak. She said, do you have a cat? I said, no, but I've seen them yawn, She said, it's as big as you can possibly make it. And then went on to explain that the only time you create that kind of openness naturally is when you yawn or vomit. Mm-hmm. She said, so I'm asking you to recreate that internal setup for the tube out of which your air is going to flow. And so, that always stayed with me. I remember her talking about feeling that I was going to have a little bit of a tug on each side of my neck, that I shouldn't worry about that I might notice it at first till I got used to it, but that was part and parcel of that process. Make sure you have your space, your inside dynamic before you phonate.
Yeah.
And it was very helpful because, of course, if you take that split second to make sure you're set up.
I can remember her standing here, putting her fingers right here on these tendons and saying, do you feel this? You feel these? These have to be open. If they're tight or if they're in here, then the larynx isn't free. And so I would sing scales upon scales with my fingers, just putting these and feeling like I could open my throat, and they would move out of the way so that there was space in here for the larynx to float. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember her ever telling me that the larynx had to be jammed down. And this is a technique that is being taught, and I understand it. For her, a lowered larynx was important, but it had to be floating and just natural. And the space had to be created for it. So I would put my fingers on these two tendons, and as I opened, I could feel them going out. As I breathed, I could feel them going out, and I had to train myself to feel that feeling. And oddly enough, of course, it didn't matter what no, it mattered. But what I wanted to say was, we would spend a whole lesson working on breathing, or we would spend a whole lesson working on chest voice, or we would spend a whole lesson working on placement without ever even really marrying them, and then eventually she started to put them together, which was a strange feeling. And she was marrying them while I was singing, but I didn't really know what she was doing, because I didn't have her ear, and I'd never been a teacher. And if I had to do that today, I don't know if I could do it. I hope I could. But I remember her also. No, that's something else. So yeah, this throat being open, that was connected to the soft palate being raised, and these tendons moving to the side so that the larynx could float in its natural state, be connected to chest resonance, but high enough that the upper resonance was still a possibility. Which, of course, both those things were incredibly important to her. You couldn't just have this. You couldn't just have this. A voice with one or the other just doesn't work, or it might work for a little while, but it won't work for very long.